Hi, I'm Maria. I'm a sophomore biochemistry major.
And I'm Rachel. I'm a sophomore physical therapy major.
So today we'll be talking about a slice of another world, and we're going to talk about how we're both adopted from China. So I was adopted from China back in April 2002 by my adoptive parents, and I'm also going to go into identity kind of because my adopted mother was born and raised in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. My dad, however, he was born in Cuba and immigrated to the US when he was about 2 or 3 years old. And so that's why my name is Maria Perez. And I think it's interesting because most people expect to see like some Hispanic Latino woman when they meet me, and then they just meet like some Asian girl and they're just so shocked, and I'm like, yeah, well, that's just who I am, and everyone just gets confused. Like, actually, when I was at the doctor's office the one time, they put down for Hispanic and Latino on my documents, and I'm like, no, you need to change that, like, that's not right. And I always felt so awkward, like, expressing who I was because of my name, and, like, on the SATs, when you put down your ethnicity, it's just always so awkward, you know? Yeah.
So I was actually adopted on Mother's Day of 2002 as well. I was adopted around 10 months, and I was born in like the Yiyang province. I think we're both like from the south.
We're close, yeah. I'm like
country.
southeast kind of.
Yeah. But like when we were born, there was like this policy in place. It was only in effect for a couple of years, but it's called the one-child policy, and basically, like, China's population was growing too fast that they had to like give some sort of rule or policy where they had to like make it smaller. So each family in China was only allowed to have one child, and so with a lot of girls, they couldn't carry on the family name, so they wanted to give away the girls and have boys. And so that's why you see a lot of people, a lot of girls our age in different countries, especially in America. But I always think back to how it could have been, and like, what if my parents didn't adopt me, or like, what if I ended up in a completely different situation than I am now. So it always gives me like appreciation for being in this country and like being surrounded by the people that I am, having loving parents, loving friends, being able to like be at LVC and like explore different opportunities and have opportunities of like education and pursuing my degree, and it always like being raised in a transracial environment, like where we're not exposed to our own culture, it like makes us more curious about our own like culture and other people's culture. Like, it makes us like interested and like about learning about other people. I think like it gives us a better appreciation of like, where do you come from? So yeah.
You had to go off of that, like, of a Asian person, but I absolutely don't like Asian food at all, and everyone's so shocked about that, and I'm just like, just because I grew up in white culture, and for me, Asian culture was completely out of the picture because my dad was Cuban, so I mean, all we grew up in was like Hispanic culture kind of. I mean, my whole dad's side is all Hispanic, they all speak Spanish, all eat, Hispanic foods, and so I was just always put in that situation where I didn't have a chance to learn about my own culture. And eventually one day I will want to learn about it, but I'm just so busy now. But for me to grow up in like a white Hispanic culture, but also like look Asian on the outside, it was like difficult for me to find my identity because like our society is so stereotypical that it's hard to fit into that stereotype. I know stereotypes are bad, but like it's just people expect something different of you, and but from an early age I did realize I was adopted because I kind of figured it out. But then like as I grew up, I'm like, wow, like my biological parents really made a huge sacrifice to let me have this life,
Yeah, it's a big decision to like adopt a child, especially like because we're transracial. Like, there's another aspect that they couldn't really account for, and it is like something that like we grew up with, especially like I know I did. I don't know if like you like had trouble, but like I know that my family like loves me, but it is hard like underneath, just kind of knowing that you're different, not knowing who your family is, not knowing who your biological parents are, not knowing if you have siblings somewhere in the world. So it can be hard to come to terms with that. But again, like, I just try to think about how grateful I am and how like blessed like my life is to be here, because it could have been completely different. And you always have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think about it a lot of times about my biological parents. Like, I don't know if they're sick, I don't know if they're healthy, I don't even know if they're dead or alive, and it's scary. And I always think about like siblings. Like, I have siblings out there, and I'm thinking back to like biology classes where they're like, oh, do you see the resemblance with you and your parents? I'm just like, I don't know, because it's always just so awkward. And because like a lot of people don't realize that you're adopted, so they just expect you to follow all these like Asian norms and everything. I'm just like, no, I'm completely white, but it's fine.
Yeah. And like going back off of like what you said, that we have no idea what our biology is. Like, I don't know if I am prone to like a certain disease. Going to the doctor's office, like, they ask you questions and you have no idea, and so we're basically like starting from like a blank slate. We don't know any of our family history, and sometimes that's hard as well, because as we're getting older, I think more about like our future and like possibly having kids, and my concern is like, oh, I don't know anything about myself. How can I like bring someone else into this world when like I don't know like what I could be passing down to them? So again, like, that's always a reminder of like, oh, I don't really know anything. I need to start getting all this information. And yeah, so I think us being here, it's also different because, like I said, we're a small population. It's not a wide range of girls in our like circumstance, because after a couple of years they like retracted the policy, so it hasn't been in effect for about like 10 years. So it is a small population, so when we understand and like we meet other people, it's a big connection, and I feel like that's how we met kind of, and that's like how we connected at first, and now like we're really good friends here. And I've had that with other people too, and that's like how you first bond, and it's like a special connection that you can't really like replicate, and it's different because it's like it only applies to like us, like a select few of people. So I think it's kind of cool in that aspect as well.
Yeah, and I think growing up like multiracial, it's really helped me open my perspectives on other people and be more open to other ideas and other cultures. In fact, like, I was so motivated in middle school and high school because I've always wanted to learn Spanish fluently and like volunteer abroad and do mission work in Central America. And it's just like really weird because I'm taking my time to learn this other language, which is Spanish, instead of like my native tongue, which is Chinese. And yeah, I would love to learn it someday, but I don't know if I'm going to or not.
Yeah, and to go off of that, like, again, people do assume, because some people come up to me, like I worked at a retail job this past summer, and people came up to me a lot and like started speaking in Chinese to me, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I wasn't offended. Like, I'm completely open about like my background, but I just think it's funny how people do assume, and it reminds you in that aspect when things happen like that. It does remind you like who you are, and it's kind of like an identity crisis, like where you're like, you feel like you should be immersed in your own culture and know it, but you don't, and it's not your fault, it's nothing that you did, but it's just kind of like reality. And so sometimes it can be kind of hard to come to terms with that.
That's why I always feel awkward when I walk into Chinese restaurants or go to Chinatown, because they always expect you to be this like Asian woman once again, but you're not. It's weird that sometimes like I run into these encounters where people like meet me and they expect me to like not even speak English, or like not like speak English without an accent or something like that, and then I start talking and they're like, oh, you speak like perfect English, and I'm like, yeah, well, because I've grown up here my whole life. it's just awful that people assume like so many things about other people without getting to know them. But
with a lot of children that I've like come into contact with, or like other peers, like another thing about our identity is that like we don't know so much about ourselves that like one day like I was like, Mom, how do you know that my birthday is like my actual birthday? Did you just make it up? Like am I actually like younger, older, who knows? And she was like, no, you actually came with a note, and it said your birthday and it said your name that your like family gave you. So I think I'm lucky in that aspect that I do know my actual birthday. And it's interesting because in China, like your first name is where you're from, and then your last name, or the last part of your name, is like your actual name. So it gives you kind of like, oh, like I'm from here, and when you like interact with other people and you get their name, you'll like automatically know like where they are from. So I think that's another cool aspect as well. So like my name is Yishao Liu, which I'm from the Yiyang province. So and like, did you want to talk about
my Chinese name is Rao Yuping, so I'm from the Shangrao province of China. But I didn't come with a note, I didn't come with anything, so they basically guessed my birthday. And they have no clue who my parents were. They don't know where I was actually born. Shangrao is just where my orphanage was.
Yeah, in that aspect too, like that was where my orphanage was as well. So yeah, but I was always just like, oh, my birthday is my birthday. But I was like, wait, like, is it? I don't know how old I actually am. Like, it was probably, like, did the doctors just guess around my age? And, like, then my parents told me about the note, but I was like, whoa, like, that's crazy. And I didn't really know. Like, I was like, did other people come with notes? Was it just me? And I think I was in a group of about 13, 14 other people, and they said in the orphanage, and they said that they didn't come with notes. So I was like, whoa, that's really like different that I did. And so it also like makes me think about my family, and like they cared enough to like give me a note. Like, was it my grandmother? Was it someone like in the family who didn't want to give me up, but like they had to because of their situation, they couldn't afford it? Like I always thought they just didn't want me, like rejection because of the one-child policy. But I actually like, I'm trying to think about it in the mother's perspective, and of course like the mother would never want to give away their child, but maybe just the circumstances that they were put in like made them, maybe she wanted a better life for me, and she knew that I could get that if she gave me away. And so she also probably made a sacrifice that like I would never thought of before. So it's just hard because there's so much uncertainty, and you just don't know. But it's weird to think about.
Yeah, I was left in a basket on the city step, and a guard came and took me to the orphanage from what my parents had told me. Well, like, going what you said, I mean, your parents definitely made a huge sacrifice to give you up like that. I mean, they could have broken the law and, like, kept you, but they knew that if you would have stayed there, like, you wouldn't have gotten as many opportunities as you would have gotten in the United States. I mean, anywhere else, honestly, but...
Yeah, it was a sacrifice on both parents' ends. And you so often think about, like, yourself and, like, how you were put into, like, these positions, and, like, you pity yourself, but also you have to think about it from other people's perspective as well.
Thank you for listening to Our Slice of the Another World.
Bye.